Hi, I'm Femi OK, and you're in The Stream. Today, performance-enhancing drugs. We'll discuss what should be done to end doping in sport. So much to talk about, a lot of sports around the world, and sometimes as a member of the public, you're watching, you're thinking, is that performance the athlete, or are they getting a little bit of extra help? Malika Blauser, digital producer, what's our online audience saying about that?
So many people watch sport, you have lots of opinions on this, and so we wanted to give our viewers a little taste of what people were saying. So we asked our community what their opinion of performance-enhancing drugs in sport was, and here's what they told us.
I'm certainly opposed to PED use in sports.
Performance-enhancing drugs have been around the professional sports field ever since that field has become lucrative, and to think otherwise is pretty naive. But does it matter?
Here we are today talking about the same issues in exactly the same way, and if anything, they're worse than they were 25 years ago.
So a range of responses, and as always, we want to hear from you. Tweet in with hashtag AJStream.
Now, with us on our studio set, we have Deborah Davies. She's an Al Jazeera investigative correspondent. Her latest report is The Dark Side Secrets of the Sports Dopers. Deborah, good to have you here.
Thank you.
We'll be talking about what you actually found out in your investigation in just a moment. So, Deborah's Al Jazeera investigation, the unit that actually ran this investigation, recently looked inside the world of sports doping. What they found was a network of medical professionals willing to help athletes stay just one step ahead of anti-doping tests. The report also raises questions of pro athletes and possible connections to those doctors. Here's a clip from the film.
He's perfectly placed to go undercover by claiming to be an athlete desperate to qualify for the Rio Olympics.
It's a closed business, you know, amongst people who are in the know. And here was an opportunity for me personally to be the guy to go undercover and make a change.
Is this Delta 2 stuff? It's like it's a steroid, but it'll be great for you for strength gains.
You're a smart guy, you just keep your mouth shut. Well, that's basically it. And you don't sell your secrets.
Now, here to talk more about doping in sports from Florida, we have Tim Montgomery, a former US track and field athlete who was featured in the documentary. In Whangapua, New Zealand, we have David Howman. He's Director General of the World Anti-Doping Agency, also known as WADA. And in Colorado, in the United States, Eddie Pels, national sports writer with the Associated Press. So welcome, everybody. Good to have you here. Tim, I'm going to take you back to 2002. If you can't remember Tim Montgomery, I'm going to remind you. Tim, 2002 was a special year because what? What happened to you? What did you do?
I broke the world record.
Yes.
Something I had been chasing forever.
All right.
And I finally achieved it.
All right. So if you blink, you're going to miss it. This is how fast Tim was.
Away they go, great start there from Dwayne Chambers, was it Tim Montgomery? Chambers now gets into his stride, Montgomery leading at the moment, Chambers trying to come back at him, but he's not going to get there. Montgomery's going to take this one, Montgomery wins it by a metre and going away, and the time, 9.78 have confirmed as a world record, and the time on the wind gauge...
Wow, Tim, that was so fast. I know you don't hold that world record anymore for a variety of reasons, but also because there's a couple of people who are faster than you anyway right now. But when you were running that, was that all you, or did you get a little extra help?
It was extra help.
Yeah. What's the extra help? What was that?
It wasn't steroids.
Right.
It was just HGH and insulin.
Were they legal at the time?
No, they wasn't.
Ah, okay. See, it's hard to get your head around why you would do that and other athletes probably in that lineup were actually clean. How do you explain why you did that and maybe some of the other athletes competing against you weren't doing that? Give us some insight.
At 19 years old, I broke the world junior record. I ran 9.96. The previous world records were held by Andre Kaysen at 10.08. I smashed it.
Yeah.
They came to me and told me that the track was 3 centimeters short. I'm like, what do I have to do with a track being 3 centimeters short? Come to find out, they measured in front of the white line. Then they said the wind gauge wasn't in the proper place. I was devastated. Truly devastated. I did everything right. And to come back and they just say, hey, we can't give you this. Try again. From that point on, I said, okay, I'm gonna try again. And I kept trying again and trying again and trying again. And you know when something is not right. If I stand beside a car and race it, I can feel the power from a car. If I stand beside a human, I can feel the power of a human. The people I was standing beside didn't have the same power as a human. So it was either you're number one in track and field or you're nothing. That's the way the sport is played now. You're not going to get a commercial based on number two.
See, Deborah, when you started investigating doping in sports, you learned a lot of new vocabulary, a lot of things that the athletes were using. Can you tell us some of the things that Tim may have used and other athletes are using just to get that little bit of extra souped up energy and ability to be the best?
Well, there's so much, and actually, you know, David's going to be the real expert in this. But I mean, the way that we looked at it, there were different classes of drugs. There is some that are genuine medicines that are there to help sick people get well. And if athletes take them, it just spikes them up a little bit. And then there's some of the stuff that Tim was using, like human growth hormone, that are kind of extra hormones that boost the body in a completely artificial way. And I mean, I think one of the most interesting things, and David will know this, is how much new stuff is coming out all the time. All these designer steroids. There are chemists out there whose mission in life is to beat people like David and keep one step ahead of the testers. And so all the time there's this cat and mouse game, you know, the laboratories test for one thing, the dopers come up with something else, the dopers leap one step ahead. I mean, I don't envy the role of the testers. They've got a tough game on their hands.
And David, I see you nodding your head there, so I'm going to pose this question we got online to you. This is from Neslihan, and she says, well, let's look at the reasons why these drugs are so readily and easily available to athletes. Are they readily available? How easy is it to obtain some of these?
Well, they are readily available on the internet, for example, and also through prescription, because many of the substances that are used by athletes are in fact out there for good and proper medical reasons. And Deborah just mentioned that. EPO, for example, was put into place by the pharmaceutical industry to help people with liver problems and other related problems to that. It's used or abused by athletes to get an advantage in their performance, and therefore is something that was put out there for good reason, but abused for bad reason.
Sure.
And it goes with other substances. But then you add to that what you just mentioned, the designer drugs, where there are chemists who do spend a lot of time and money assisting athletes to cheat. And the reason they do that is there's a lot of money in that. So it's not just the athletes, it's the people who are rewarding the athletes by making huge prize money or paying them a lot of money, more than they were 20, 30 years ago, which creates an environment of greed, if you like.
Right. EPO is a hormone that increases red blood cell production. Eddie, what did you want to add? Go ahead.
No, well, I mean, David brings up money, and you hate to say it, but yeah, follow the money in everything. Nobody's doing this for free. And in track and field and all these Olympic sports, there isn't that much money to go around. It's not like some of your football over there or American football where there's plenty of wealth, so you're a top athlete, and I'll bring up Tim. He knows he's got a window of when he can be very, very good. And he also knows that a lot of people are trying to take this away. Some of them are doing it legally, some are doing it illegally, but you want to cash in on that. And, you do it. I think elite athletes are built to push the line, see what they can get away with, go to the very max. And the temptation and the money that's available just makes it very hard to say no if somebody comes up to you and says, you know what, I got something for you and you're not going to get caught. And you're going to make 6 figures or 7 figures. It's very hard to
one of the things that came up in our investigation, we spoke to this fantastic guy called Eddie Dominguez, who spent 6 years trying to catch dopers in MLB. And he said to us, look at who gets caught. It's the minor players who get caught. once they're rich, once they're successful, they can afford the doctors and the pharmacists who can advise them on how not to get caught. That's what's happening.
Wow.
And Tim, since everyone pretty much is saying follow the money, I want you to have a listen to a video comment we got who's basically saying that same thing. This is Orlando Taylor.
I think one of the things that could have been done in order to broaden discussion was to talk about the pressures that athletes feel to perform at top level. That comes from the fans who want winning athletes and winning teams, from the city management, from ownership, and from the coaches. And to meet these contract incentives as well, we have to talk about those pressures.
So Tim, he talks about some of the incentives that leagues and owners might have in making sure their athletes are top-notch. Did you feel those pressures?
Yeah, you feel the pressure, but you also feel the pressure of yourself. You're out there to win. You're not a top athlete if you're not competitive within yourself. When I was on this line and amongst the guys that I was running against, I knew who was clean and who was dirty. You know. Had I not won that race, Dwayne Chambers would have been first, and we know for a fact that he was dirty. He tested positive. We must also say that Tim Montgomery has never tested positive on a test.
Tim, but you and I know that that doesn't mean that you weren't taking banned substances, right? Just
right.
But passing a test doesn't mean that you weren't somewhere along the line taking something that was illegal.
Right.
So,
That's
I
why
mean,
we're not afraid.
congratulations for not getting caught on a test, but it doesn't mean that you're clean.
No, that just means we're not afraid because we're not afraid that we're going to get caught because we know how to beat the test.
See, this is not good news for David. Tim, having come through this the other side, how would you tell David and the World Anti-Doping Agency, how would you advise him to do a better job at catching people? How do they do that?
Well, first they got to understand the people that they're trying to catch. He must first have a relationship.
I think Tim makes a very good...
Yeah,
Sorry, Tim, I think you make a very good point. And there are two aspects of it that I'd like to continue with. The first is that you are persuaded by people around you to do things and take stuff. We know that. We know the entourage is probably more to blame in many examples of cheating by doping than the athletes themselves. The second thing that we do know is that we cannot, through scientific analysis of blood and urine, catch all those who are beating the regulations. We know that. And that's why we have introduced over the last number of years the power of investigations, gathering evidence in other ways and using that evidence to bring home sanctions against athletes who have broken the rules. And I think that's a significant improvement in the way that the anti-doping community is operating.
David, do you have any idea how many you're actually catching? I mean, of the ones you're catching, what percentage of athletes do you reckon are actually doping?
We know that probably on an annual basis, 2% of the tests that are analysed return positive results. That's a very small amount.
Oh my goodness.
We know that probably in some sports, the numbers that are cheating are maybe up into double digits.
What, like
so
15, 20%?
there are quite a number who might be getting away with it.
Yeah, and I mean, what I would say when you say, how do you catch more, to put it in one sentence, I'd say make David Howman keep in his job for about 5 more years and then give him 5 times the amount of money to do some real investigations. You know, let's get into this whole Russian track thing. Those things were corrupt from the very, very top. You know, how do you ensure that all your athletes are going to be clean when you got, you know, not to spoiler alert, but when you've got the head of track being accused of taking money, you got people at very, very high levels in Russia being accused of altering the system. Well, you know, David does a fantastic job and he's a straight shooter and wants all the right things, but his place doesn't have the money, you know, or the manpower to go out and do the investigations and come up with new tests and do all the other things. I mean, it's a tough fight here. And you also have to have the right people in place. And we can get into that if you want. But, you know, I don't know that there's any answer, but they need to put more resources into it.
This seems almost impossible. I mean, for instance, if we look at cycling for Lance Armstrong, if he could go for years and years and years and years and not be caught, and I believe, David, he was never ever caught in a test, it's like, the rest of the sporting world can totally get away with it. Malika, what do you have?
And that's exactly what people are picking up on, is how then do you go about catching people? So this is a video comment I want to play from someone named Eddie Glick. This is what he told the Stream.
I think for starters, we need to increase the amount of testing that's done on athletes. I actually played college baseball, and we didn't have any testing procedures in place.
So that was at the college level, and of course we are talking about the pros. So that leads to this tweet from Nafizi, who says, the sad thing about doping is that as efforts are being made to detect and stop it, new methods are then devised to promote it. And that's something, Deborah, you mentioned a little bit earlier, and you were throwing it over to David. David, how do you then stay one step ahead?
Well, you've got to think of a number of ways, and one is to link in with the pharmaceutical industry, which we do. And we work with them during their research and development stages of new drugs to see whether there are some of those substances that might be abused by athletes in due course. And when they come on the market, we're able to detect them. So that's a way that we can do things. We don't have enough money. I think Eddie is right on that. We don't have sufficient money to be able to do the research that we require to do. And until we get that sort of money, it is going to be a problem for sport to combat. But the other thing I think I need to make quite clear on this program is that we do not have any mandate as far as the professional leagues in North America are concerned. They are leagues which have their own rules. Each one has a different set of rules, whereas the rest of the world, the Olympic movement, and the other professional leagues throughout the world follow our World Anti-Doping Code. And so there is that difference that I think you should be aware of.
Sure. One of the things you should know, I mean, as David will know, there are two different tests for human growth hormone. One will pick it up faster, one will allow it to stay in your system longer without being picked up. NFL, as I understand it, use the lower test.
Right.
So there's even less chance. Someone I spoke to said you'd have to be phenomenally stupid to get caught using HGH.
Yeah, I mean
that's true, Deborah.
The tests, the things that the test can't do, that's just the tip of the iceberg of the problems in the NFL's testing program. And just as one example, and we could go on forever, you know, when you say random testing, a lot of people say, oh, that's fair. No, that does not work. If you're picking guys out of a hat and you pick the punter and the kicker, and you know, or the two kickers on a team, you're not going after the guys that are going to be using HGH. It's got to be more targeted. It can't be just I test you once and then I know I'm never coming back to you that year. I mean, the laundry list of problems. And the other thing, you know, to David's point about the NFL and American sports not being under water rules, they have absolutely zero desire to get into that game, and I think we all know it. At the bottom line, and this will, you know, I'll get ripped by the NFL for saying this, but nobody there is going to sign up to something that said, let's put you on a program that makes all your athletes smaller and slower. They are not going to sign up for that. And you can blame it on the union. You can do whatever you want. They will never sign up for that.
All right. Taylor Teegarden is a baseball player. He plays for the Chicago Cubs. You came across him in what way, Deborah?
Well, we were filming Undercover with Charlie Sly through our undercover athlete, Liam, who you saw in your clip. And Liam and Charlie went back to Charlie's apartment, and lo and behold, waiting in the foyer was Taylor Teegarden, who comes up to Charlie's apartment, and he's come to collect, we're not quite sure what, but a bag full of stuff.
I'm going to play a little clip. And Charlie, for anyone who's not watched the documentary yet, is who?
Charlie Sly knows about drugs, and Charlie Sly knows about athletes. He's probably one of the best doping brains in America.
All right, so this is a current baseball player in the United States playing for a big team. Have a listen to what this documentary found out about what he'd been up to.
I used it last year. Yeah. I was scared, to be honest with you. I took it for like 2 weeks. Right. I had a test 4 weeks after my last administration of it. Nothing happened. And I was also taking peptides too, but they were all urine tests, no blood tests.
So they're not doing blood tests?
No, they do.
They do?
They do, but once a year, maybe twice at most.
So this athlete, Tim, is taking a banned illegal substance for his sport. Apart from cheating, there's this whole area of what will it do to your body? Have you seen any side effects from the stuff that you took?
Yes, greatly.
What's happened to you?
Well, you got to understand if your heart is like a muscle. So you increase your heart as a muscle and then you not active. That heart is still enlarged.
Right.
So at the moment I have developed a heart murmur.
Okay.
Which later on can cause a stroke.
Whoa.
From taking HGH, I get fatigued quicker, and most people take HGH, and I was taking insulin. And the reason why I didn't have to take a steroid at the time is because I had already made my gains the year before.
Right.
So I can maintain it now. Once you got the strength, you just now on maintenance until you start seeing some downward spirals of your strength, and then you go back with some testosterone or of that nature.
And you
but
were
nowadays,
okay. Did you know that you were potentially messing up your body?
No, I did not. I did not. As I was taking it, one day I had injected myself with some insulin, and I just broke out in a deep sweat, and I had to be taken to the hospital. And I became friends with one of the doctors in there, and he was like, "What did you do?" And I said, "Let me be honest with you." And he said, "Do you know that anything, testosterone, HGH, anything you put in your body, if you have a small speck of cancer, you are shortening your life?" And I said, "No." He said, "The first thing I want to do is set you up and have you checked out." So he put me on an EKG, had me checked out for any cancer cells or anything like that. And that's some of the stuff I did not know. That's the part that no one tells you. Everybody tell you about the glory act of it.
Yeah.
The fast races, the big muscles, the #1 spot. But no one tells you about the side effects that's going to happen to you. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing now. I have 3 kids that runs track. And my daughter, she is 13 years old and she ran 11.9 and 23.8 at 13. And she said, "Daddy, I want to break Flojo's record."
Huh.
And I said, "Whoa. Whoa."
Let's see if she can beat Daddy's record. That would be even more impressive. Malika, what do you have?
Definitely good luck to her. So, Eddie, some of those adverse health effects that Tim was mentioning is one reason people online say we should care. But there are other questions on what else. So this is the watcher who says the reason we should care is because this spoils the whole idea of fair play and competition. On the other hand, though, you have tweets like this from Douglas who says these drugs are routinely taken by students, doctors, stock traders, and journalists. So why are we picking on sportsmen and women? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think, the second one is easy. Nobody that I know of is willing to pay, $500 to come watch me type. If they were, I would, and if they were, I would get on whatever testing regimen David wanted for me. Why should we care? I bring up Usain Bolt, who is the world record holder. He's clean, and until something else happens, we're always going to assume he's clean. But if there's a sports fan out there that hasn't at least wondered at some point what's going on, what makes him faster than anybody else who's ever broken this record, we all have these curiosities. And I'm not trying to taint Usain Bolt here, but what I'm saying is what Usain Bolt deserves is a clean worldwide program that he is part of. So that and you know what, Deborah, let's just bring it up. If Peyton Manning was part of a wonderfully state-of-the-art testing program in the NFL, by the way, it didn't even exist in 2012, and right now it's hard to even say it's much better.
Eddie, I've got 20 seconds. Finish your sentence quickly.
He could stand in front of the microphone and say, "Look, best testing program in the world. Nobody caught me."
Eddie
That's
Pels,
better than what he can do now.
David Howman, Tim Montgomery, Deborah Davies, thanks for being part of this conversation about doping in sports. Look here at my laptop, www.aljazeera.com/investigations. You can watch The Dark Side, which is about an Al Jazeera investigation into sports doping, right here online. We're seeing the post show, stream.aljazeera.com for more conversation there. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hello again, this is the Streams Online post show. We're talking about doping in sports off the back of an Al Jazeera documentary called The Dark Side, which is looking at doping in sports. I said to Deborah Davies, who was part of this investigation, it's her investigation, what did we leave out, Deborah, in that conversation? And you said?
Well, I mean, just looking at the side effects, I mean, I think at least 24 cyclists have killed themselves using EPO because it thickened the blood so much and they died. Oh. There are 100+ NFL players suing their own league because they're claiming they've been doped up with really powerful narcotics that have led to long-term kidney damage. And it's exactly Eddie's point that they claim they were doped up by their coaches because they wanted to keep the stars on the field, keep the money rolling in. So, you know, there is a sense that there's a vested interest within the sport in having people dope up. It's better entertainment.
Mm. I mean, that's terrifying.
And why should we care? You saying, why should we care?
Yeah.
We got to care because it's going to spill over into the kids. Michael Jordan's shoe do not make you jump higher, and it's one of the leading shoes out there being sold to the kids. Kids are dying over Michael Jordan's shoes. So if the kids think that the athletes are getting away with doping, they're going to go to doping too.
What's the worst case you've looked into or you've felt like you've had the most success with, David? In terms of doping?
Most success is really with the result of controversies, and we may be underway now with a huge job in Russia, as Eddie pointed out.
Yeah.
Because our investigation, which commenced at the beginning of last year, has revealed corruption, bribery, and so forth at the top of Russian athletics and international athletics. And that is of great concern to us because it's not just the athletes, it's the administrators or the management people. And when that happens, we need to combat it.
Sure. See, David, when I was a little girl and I was watching Russian athletes, I was 5 and I knew. It's like, why is it taking us so long? When you were watching the shot putters, the amazing athletes they had, and they were just winning everything. Why is it taking 30 years to get to this stage where they might not possibly be able to compete in the next Olympics? Why does it take that long?
Well, you've got to have, I think you have to have the incentive to do this work, and I think the incentive that we've got is pretty good, and we got a change to the rules which commenced on the 1st of January 2015, which allowed us to undertake the investigations, and so we've done that. I think when you look at who is responsible for doing the testing programs, if it's the International Athletics Federation themselves, where is the incentive to find the chiefs? They prefer perhaps not to. And we need to think about that. I know that there is an idea floating around now that there be an independent testing agency for the whole world. That's something that needs to be investigated further.
Yeah.
And Tim, I just want to cycle back, forgive the pun, just a little bit to something you mentioned because we're getting a lot of tweets on it. This is Ryan, and he says that what these drugs do are risk a player coming back from injury prematurely and encourages younger, amateur, and minor leaguers to do the same. We also got a comment from someone who has some firsthand experience with this. His name is Greg, and this is what he told us.
As an athlete in college with a desire to play in the NFL, I recognized that I needed to be bigger and stronger in order to achieve that goal, which led to my decision to take steroids. After I was cut, I later realized the mistake I had made in using steroids. And as my career progressed, I had the opportunity to coach football at the high school level. And I used my experiences working with high school athletes to help convince them and persuade them to avoid the path that I had gone down, because I recognize the danger of using steroids.
So Tim, you mentioned talking to students and parents. What is it that you tell them to discourage them?
I tell them, just look at me. Prime example. If you encourage your son or daughter to start using protein, it's going to advance to something else, because they're going to get their performance boost, maybe not by the protein, just by the thinking that the protein is boosting it. And then they're going to reach for something else and something else. So I tell them, listen, make it their own ability. That's why I came up with Numa Speed. Never underestimate my ability. Make it your own ability. Don't rely on yams in Jamaica. I had to slide that in there.
You know, but you know what? There's actually a lot of medicine have come from yams in Jamaica, so and they taste fantastic. All right, just to be serious for a moment here. there was something that jumped out at me about the dark side, and one of the things was how scientific this is. It's not about just doing something illegal. It's about a little bit of this, a little bit of that. How many injections? What do you eat? Eat your veggies. I mean, so much science in this. It's nuts.
And that's in a sense also one of the saddest things. I mean, the guys that we filmed undercover, they are super smart, and they are passionate about sport, but they've turned all of their expertise, all of their knowledge to the dark side. David, I've got bad news for you. These guys are now thinking about all sorts of things that the testers haven't even thought about yet.
Wow.
They're working out ways of speeding up the brain process. They're working out ways of new drugs coming on the market for things like multiple sclerosis that can be abused in sport. They are streaming ahead with all kinds of new techniques to beat the system. They're really good at what they do, these dopers.
Let me give our audience who are watching online just a little taste of this. So we're going to hear from Chad Robertson, and he's put together this program for your undercover athlete, Liam.
65 pages of detail
about
how to dope yourself up.
Okay, so it's an undercover athlete saying, I want to be better at my sport. I've got to a certain age. I want one last try at the Olympics. And this is what he came up with. Have a look at this.
You're going to be doing like 10 injections a day in some cases. Wow. Okay, hormonal enhancement. Now we're going to get into the bad shit. Right. So
Chad explains they'll give Liam prescription drugs, falsely claiming he's suffering from exhaustion and low fertility.
Patient complaints as soon as associated with hypogonadism, fatigue, lack of libido, low energy. So we're going to definitely basically use HCG and clomiphene to target those areas right away. The other areas that I'm going to do, I'm going to increase your growth hormone levels and IGF levels drastically through 3 ways. IGF-LR3, modified GRF-129, and ephemeron. So I'm going to really distribute.
David, have you ever heard anything like that? Ever witnessed anything like that? I mean, that's remarkable, isn't it?
No, not to us. We've heard a lot of that, and we've asked governments to intervene with people who are encouraging athletes to do it, whether they're doctors or pharmacists. The regulations governing those people can be used to effectively remove their registration, for example.
Yeah.
And we think that ought to be done by governments if they're showing the commitment in the fight against doping in sport.
Eddie, was this news to you when you saw that? I mean, we all kind of know about doping. We know the athletes who've been caught. But when you hear that, an entire program for how you can do better, what did you make of that?
I'll be honest, it's an eye-opener, the detail, to get the detail, but none of it is new to me, and God knows it's not new to David.
It's depressing.
But it's depressing. And again, it goes back to the point I made earlier. It reinforces the need to have the kind of resources. It's like trying to stop the illegal arms trade or the illegal drug trade. You're not going to catch everyone. I don't think David's going to sit there and tell you he's going to do 100% in any time frame. But what are they supposed to do? Stop trying? Completely stop trying so that now everything you do, and there's some people that say, yeah, let's go for it. Okay, that's fine. We'll have more people dying. We'll have less, interesting events. That is not a long-term answer.
So you asked, what are they supposed to do? I am getting that question and an answer online. This is what people are saying. Colin says, well, at least half of all Division I college football players have used steroids over substantial periods of time. That's this person's allegations. Please legalize it. Another person on Facebook tells us, this is Rob, who says, legalize doping, but make it so dopers can only compete against others. There could be 2 Olympics, one for doers and one for honest athletes.
I'm sorry. I mean, I'm as cynical as they come, but I'm not that cynical. That's ridiculous. And I'll let David speak to it. Why try? Why have a police force? Why do anything? It's absolutely silly. It's dangerous. And for somebody, for some sporting league to have an all doping Olympics to actually, approve of something like that or condone it, I can only imagine the rule book they write and then the number of You think the NFL's in trouble right now with those lawsuits? Somebody puts an official stamp of approval on that, and it's all over, baby. I mean, there won't be sports anymore. So I'm sorry, I shouldn't even be giving that question that much attention, but I don't.
But you know what, Eddie? It comes up a lot, and I think it's really good to hear why you cannot do that, because also people will die.
Yeah, and I mean, I spend a lot of time, talking to David and Travis. Why do we care about this? I mean, because you're kind of fighting a battle that you're never, I don't think, are going to ever absolutely win. But there's and there's also the sense, going back to what Tim says, is what are we doing out here as a society? What are we trying to teach our kids? What does sports supposed to teach you? Why do you put your kid in sports? I mean, remember this. This is going to sound a little preachy, but you put your kid in sports so that he can learn some life lessons about teamwork and sacrifice and, not instant gratification and exercise and things like that. That's the core of what sports is supposed to be for you and me and all the people that aren't going to reach the gold medal level. And so are we just going to say that none of that matters anymore?
I think that's really
important. And
the
only thing is winning and making $10 million? It's a silly argument.
I mean, I speak as a parent who spent a lot of my life stood on touchlines, freezing cold, urging on small boys, to go through the mud and the rain and all the rest of it. And then, little boys crying that we was robbed, Mum, because the referee was unfair.
We was robbed!
We was robbed, Mum. Sport does teach huge lessons in life. Yeah. And kids look up. These are sporting icons. They earn millions because they sell products to millions. So if that whole reputation is not built on fair play, then the whole system is rotten. So even if you can't clean it all up, my goodness, you really need to try.
Sure. Tim, I know you've been trying to jump in for the last 2 minutes. I'll give you the final word. What do you want us to wrap us up with? What thought do you want to leave us with?
I say for water, you must, to David, you must first examine the coaches and the organization. Because I get so many emails from athletes from across the country coming to Tim Montgomery, the same reason I went to Charlie Francis. I went for the dark side. And when they get to Tim Montgomery and I tell them it's a better way, and I'm going to show you the better way, I may not stop them, but I didn't get it to them. So if we start examining the coaches that's coaching the athletes, then we can start protecting the athletes and saying, hey, if you're going to be a coach and your athlete tests positive, you're responsible also.
All right, this is not a conversation that we can have and finish in one afternoon, but I really appreciate you being part of it on the stream. Malika, what do you have?
I'll end with this tweet from Jakes, who says, we need to appeal to all federations, protect clean athletes. If found guilty, ban for life.
Deborah, Tim, David, and Eddie, thanks for being part of the stream today. Really appreciate it. Take care, everybody.